Hello to all of our listeners out there in the land of blockchain and otherwise. My name is Alex Paul Manders, and I'm a director at the Information Services Group. My core responsibility is to lead and manage our ISG Blockchain Now global and services and solutions line. And I'm joined with my two colleagues, Jason Stading and Cole Flashenberg, as we explore the world of blockchain with a number of guest speakers and leaders, specifically from Dole, Bear, MediLedger, Hashed Health, and Sprint. Our guest speakers are going to talk a lot about different applications and use cases as they relate to supply chain and otherwise. And we hope that you will find some value throughout the course of the series. And I am joined today with Jason Stading, a subject matter expert in the field of blockchain. And we're here today to recap our discussions on the 2020 podcast series, which we hope that you have downloaded all of them from ISG's website and had a listen. Today, we're just going to do a recap and then talk about what we're going to look at in the future in 2021 with our future set of episodes. So, Jason, I want to kind of pause and see where you would like to take this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Welcome to our listeners. For this one, we just wanted to have a conversation back and forth with Alex, and really, I don't know if the listeners have had a chance to really get a feel for Alex's background and how he got introduced to blockchain and the hands-on experience that he has here. And so I guess I'll open it up to you, Alex. Now, you have a very interesting, in my opinion, very interesting background in blockchain. How you got involved, the hands-on experience that you built up, and love for you to just kind of walk us through that story and share with the listeners more about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the high level is that several years ago, it must have been 4 years ago at this point, I had read an article on emerging platforms in blockchain as blockchain related to the finance industry. And I was reading the article and I had to read it twice. And I was like, well, this conceptually makes sense, but I don't fully understand it enough to be able to explain it. Yeah. And so what I did was got online, figured out that a blockchain computer was actually part of a network that was running Bitcoin. And then I said, okay, well, this is interesting. I don't know about this Bitcoin thing, but I've heard about it before. And then fast forward, ended up figuring out the instructions to build a blockchain computer, a cryptocurrency miner, ordered all those parts. It was kind of funny back then because everybody was trying to get their hands on GPU cards and parts, and I'd never built a computer before, but that's essentially what happened was assembled a computer. That led to assembling upwards of 10 computers. And in the process, not only understood and taught myself how a blockchain computer worked or a cryptocurrency miner, but more importantly, understood how software applications laid on top of that computer network. Learned all the different types of cryptocurrencies, all the different use cases for blockchain networks, and really just had a PhD, so to speak, in everything and anything that related to the blockchain networks, different kinds of networks, how they could be used, all that stuff. And from there, it really led to a group of students at University of Texas, Austin reached out, asked me to come give a lecture at UT Austin. And then that led to building a track and trace application with a client up in the Bronx, New York, in the elevator industry. And then, long story short, led to me becoming a guest lecturer at Stanford University on blockchain and supply chain. So it's been kind of a weird and interesting journey, but it really all dates back to hands-on experience and kind of eating your own dog food. I think a lot of folks like to, my opinion, Jason, is a lot of folks like to say they're an expert at specific things or, be kind of a talking head with things, but really brass tacks is what it comes down to is people that can assemble these things and build the applications. Those are the ones that really have a deep understanding of how things are connected and work.
I completely agree. Um, First of all, I think it's a fascinating story, and it just kind of goes to show, I think, your ability to pick up and it's a self-taught exercise of learning something new and becoming a master of it. And what I will say is it's one thing, like you said, for folks to read a few books or something or articles and claim to be a blockchain expert, but you've been there, done it, and there's a lot to be respected for it. So where I kind of want to go from here, and what I was hoping to talk about, and we can go in whichever direction you want, but I'd love to get your thoughts on our series that we had. We had a lot of really good conversations with a few different guests from different industries. I feel like all of those were fascinating conversations. What are your thoughts on those, recapping those conversations?
The individuals we spoke to are certainly respected leaders in their areas. Lyle Piesaski from Sprint or T-Mobile, and Kaylee Perry from Dole, and Christine from Bear, and John from Hash Health, and Muppy from MediLedger. Yeah, so they're all highly respected individuals and thought leaders in their area.
Absolutely.
And I respect all of them because they were and are pioneers in their own right in trying to push a vision forward, because at the end of the day, these folks, they get to face the headwind of, well, blockchain's another fad. It's all it is a cryptocurrency. They have to answer and address these things every day. So yeah. I applaud them for, sticking to a vision and not deviating from what the core point of blockchain networks are, which, we don't have to get into today. But I thought a combination of talking about healthcare, pharmaceuticals, food, supply chains, crops, all that stuff, when you look at those individual use cases and discussions, telecom with Lyle, we can really, instead of summarizing individually those conversations, we can put it together in one nice little package here and look at what happened 2 days after the COVID-19 vaccine rolled out. And that was an immediate recall and stopping a truck carrying COVID-19 vaccines in both Alabama and California. And let me just pause and ask you, Jason, while that article or news story didn't necessarily address the technology as to how that happened, I'm curious what your perspective is on how that happened and how it happened so fast.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We can make some assumptions here, and I guess I'll put a disclaimer in this that if the technology wasn't in place, there's opportunity to put it in place, to offer some monitoring and actionable capabilities. But like you said, if that truck stopped with the knowledge that the temperature had gone out of a range that was safe for the vaccines, we could probably assume that there was a sensor in that truck. Whether it was IoT related, whether it was connected to a blockchain network of some sort, the potential and the use case, I think, is there. And I think where you're going with it is looking back at the use cases that our guests in our series talked about. There's opportunity there to connect all those different use cases and put it towards something powerful that can be applied, to the broader society, like a vaccine, right?
Yeah, that's right. If I look at what Dole and Bear and MediLedger, all those folks spoke to, it was, number one use case, track and trace. Walmart are the king of track and trace, and they're using blockchain, right? And while we don't know if blockchain was used for the COVID-19 vaccine en route being transported on a truck, we do know that that use case is being used by Walmart and Dole and MediLedger and others, right? And
Yeah.
for me, when I look at that use case, I say, geez, that's everything in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to track a truck, control that truck's temperature with some sort of a remote, monitoring system. You're able to inform the driver to stop it. You know exactly where that shipment came from. You know what pallet it was on. You know what airplane it was on. You know where it came from, when it came from, wherever it came from, and you're able to stop it in the prevention of potentially harming a human life. And to me, that's what it's all about. That's what I'm passionate about blockchain. It's not about, for me personally, uh, calculating some future state derivative that might do some fancy thing and I capture it and I can audit it in the blockchain. That's not what this is about for me. It's about the human side of it. It always has been. And, food in general, we can save lives. Now we are potentially saving lives with a COVID-19 vaccination. I don't know if it would have hurt anybody, but let's just assume that now we don't have to worry about that, right?
Yeah.
That's what this is about, personally.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an interesting subject, talking about, obviously, a new vaccine being introduced to society is going to be controversial, but, with that, we try to put as many safeguards as we can around it. And this is just one aspect where technology, be it blockchain, be it IoT, be it information security, those three things working in play together across the different industries, and they can help us and enable us to provide as safe as a product as we can. And that's the big picture, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. It's all about consumer safety, and that again for me is where I'm passionate and have been passionate about these types of emerging technologies, whether it's blockchain or IoT. I always tend to consider them complementary solutions of each other that are absolutely cross industry. There's no way that, a single shipper developed the technology just to use it for trucking with that vaccine. There's no way. I mean, we know for a fact that Pfizer manufactured that vaccine. What airplane was it on to get here? Pfizer doesn't own an airline.
Yeah.
They don't own a trucking company, to my knowledge. Maybe they do. I could be corrected. But we're talking about, supply chain partnership and collaboration to save human lives or to, expedite the resurgence of the global economy.
Absolutely. I can completely agree. So with that, I think that, in my opinion, that wraps up, a pretty great takeaway, and kind of segues into where do you see us going next year, and in the future with blockchain and really with our series. I mean, I think we've been talking about planning some a next mini series with our blockchain podcast. Do you want to share a few thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in full transparency for our listeners, Jason and I are planning what the future of 2021 looks like for our series. We have some great ideas. We think that more light will be shown into the platform side of the technology that all of us are using, whether we know it or not. And we also think that, the use case for supply chain stands whole and true, purely based almost entirely on the use case that we just spoke about with the vaccine. We've been talking about supply chain as the killer business process for blockchain for years at this point. And we all know that supply chain has been strained. Anybody on the call listening right now, place an order on Amazon and have your order lost or delayed. So I think in 2021, Jason, I would like to unpack the supply chain use cases further to see where other companies are now exploring the idea of blockchain and different platforms in digital platform ecosystems. And I'd really like to also potentially unpack this use case with the trucking company with the vaccine. I mean, there's a lot to be learned from that, really. I mean, the great thing about technology is that we're able to to look at real life use cases in front of our own eyes rather than pontificate on the conceptualization of a technology. We have a real use case right now. Let's kind of peel into that a little bit and see what were the drivers that enabled it to happen. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. I think we've talked a little bit about what sort of guests we want to bring on, what sort of topics we want to try to unpack, and I agree. I think trying to delve into different supply chain use cases is a great plan. I really like the idea of seeing, either from a software stack perspective or just from the underlying infrastructure, how we can make use of the digital platforms that you mentioned. Because I think we were having a conversation with a client not too long ago. They were talking about the challenges of trying to connect independent systems and networks and into one larger system and ecosystem, and that to me is a really interesting challenge that I think a lot of organizations and companies face when talking about blockchain or just platforms as a whole.
I think you're right there too, and you just triggered a thought that I had, and that's that. Even though we say supply chain, most people's brains instantly go to a product or a thing, something tangible that you can put your hands on, right? But in truth, supply chain relates to virtually anything that you can apply your brain to thinking it through. Data is a supply chain. Security is a supply chain. The transmission of information through decentralized or centralized silos or ERPs in an insurance company, that's a supply chain. How does the insurance company get my consumer data? That flows through a process, otherwise considered a chain of information. And I think that we will certainly see emerging innovations and thinkers on the topic of, okay, if I'm an insurance company or I'm a bank, how can I better serve my customers with a data set or product or consumer driven product that they want that's not tangible, that's intangible, right? And how do I collaborate with my peers in the insurance industry or my peers in the banking industry, or those types of platforms that will enable people to transact data in a shared and governed manner will certainly be something that we should talk about or will talk about next year.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. It should be a good time.
Wonderful. And so, Jason, before we wrap up, I want to leave this question to the audience, and that being, if anybody is listening, at any point in 2021, and you have an interest in joining Jason and I for a conversation, happy to have you. Please go to the ISG website and look up the contact us information. Otherwise, we can be reached. There are phone numbers and things like that on the website, including the ISG Blockchain Now web page as well. But Jason, before we close, what are your predictions for 2021, and what has you excited? You're a couple years into your blockchain journey. What is it that you're excited about in 2021, either learning or talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my favorite thing is just hearing about these different use cases. Because I think the technology is past the incubation phase, which is great. But I still think that actually the use cases and the reach that we can get to with the technology is still relatively unexplored. And so I anytime I get to hear a new use case or looking at something a little bit differently and how the technology can be used and how can it be weaved over either on top of or to help enable a use case that I hadn't thought of, or just something where that helps connect the dots for me. That's what I get excited about. And hearing our guests talk about, Lyle from Sprint he comes to mind in our conversation with him. I think he kind of blew my mind a little bit on a few things that he was talking about in connected technologies and what Sprint and T-Mobile are trying to work on there. I think that was really cool.
That's awesome. Well, Jason, I have been very fortunate to have you as a teammate, and I have been excited for what we've done in 2020, and excited to work with you in 2021. See what we can learn and solution for those interested.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we can go ahead and close this out. On behalf of ISG, Jason and I would like to thank all of y'all for listening to our little podcast and our conversations. And we certainly encourage you all to reach out to us anytime with questions. We're academics and consultants at the same time. So we love to learn and help as we go. So all that said, we hope that you had as positive of a 2020 as you could have. Like I say to my daughter, I always say, hey, let's make lemonade out of lemons. And that's pretty much how I've survived the pandemic and pretty much everything else. So we hope that you have found the lemonade as well. But thank you again for listening to us, and we will look forward to future engagement in 2021. Well, we hope you found today's podcast episode valuable and insightful. And on behalf of the Information Services Group, Jason Stading and Cole Flashenberg, we'd like to thank you for listening, and we encourage you to listen to the future episodes. And also, with any questions you might have about ISG or ISG Blockchain Now, please visit isg1.com to learn more about our firm and what we do with blockchain. Thank you.